in my quiet, in my private time with God, it had become more duty bound or burdening than I at all like. And I was losing the joy of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I knew there was an emotional block there that had taken away the joy of discovery and desire, right? And so that way, I started talking to the Lord about what's the emotional block. Okay. And the interesting thing is that all has to do with our inner child and what our inner child's doing. So once you get used to doing it, like you can just do, once you get in the habit of the tools.
You put that over there. Do you want water somewhere?
I think I have tea somewhere, but yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Once you get in the habit of doing that, and so that you notice when it starts feeling funny, you can pick up those tools and ask. Like right now, you could pick up the tool and go, hey, where's right now? Because something's feeling funny inside.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of like when you take your temperature. You don't know if you're hot or not. You're feeling kind of sickly. I'm going to take my temperature because it'll give me information. Right. And so based on getting used to all these tools, which I know I've given you a lot of tools in a very short time, but the biggest understanding of tool is to know something's funny. To know a healthy, natural, normal.
Okay.
And when all of a sudden it's not.
Wow. Okay.
You don't even have to know why. To begin with, you just have to know something's up. Okay, so tonight, what we're going to talk about is I'm going to kind of give you an overview of your inner child and what that is. And I'm going to base it we're going to go back up a little bit to some things we learned early on in the course. And if you remember, we talked about, to begin with, about discovery leads to desire, leads to discipline, leads to delight, leads to devotion, right? And that the place where we end up not in relationship, but in religion, is when discovery and desire get blocked emotionally, so that now, instead of discipline, wanting to be discipled, wanting to create boundaries around protecting my discovery and desire in this relationship, instead it becomes duty bound. It becomes a burden or a chore, or something that I think God's not happy with me about, or I'm not doing it good enough or long enough, or whatever it is. And when that happens, I start avoiding being around God, or start not talking to him as much, or believing that he thinks something that he's not thinking. It's not my parents or somebody else. But the whole point is that discovery and desire naturally takes on discipline. Just like when you discover somebody you love, you desire to be with them, then you go to a place of creating boundaries and a level of trust, a level that's called discipline, to protect this relationship. But if we are emotionally blocked, then discovery and desire gets blocked off, and instead we go to duty and despair and discouragement and depression and deprivation. Right? Makes sense? Okay. So if you remember what happens in this place, we have discovery leads to desire, leads to discipline. What happens in this place where we end up in duty instead, there are 3 types of emotional blocks. And those 3 types of emotional blocks happen in childhood. And if you think about what happens in childhood to us, remember that the 3 blocks were presumption or expectation. I expect God to be doing this way, and so I'm mad at him because he hasn't. Or rejection, the fear of being rejected. And I come up with 7 different ways to not be rejected, like I'll be perfect, I won't let anybody get close enough. There's 7 different kinds of ways we try to protect ourselves from rejection. And the other one is bitterness or unforgiveness. Okay? So there's 3 kinds of emotional blocks. That's it. And what happens in childhood is that I'm this little sweet pumpkin, And I get rejected. And it hurts really bad inside. And the enemy sidles up next to me, puts his arm around me and says, you know, you don't ever have to feel that way again. If you just do this, just be perfect. You know, I remember giving you guys the example of, I remember back, it was probably somewhere between 12 and 14. And we were in the mountains with another family, and they were all playing cards. We were supposed to be asleep. And the 4 adults were laughing at how I would beg for my mother to stop beating me.
Wow.
And they thought it was funny. And I remember the enemy sidling up against me, and I said, I will never cry again. She will never get the pleasure of watching me beg her to stop again. And that was a place I believed a protection for me, but it actually created a whole lot of problems for me in adulthood. You can't hurt me, okay? And it did hurt me. It hurt my family a lot, and it hurt me. But I had been stuck in this belief that you're never going to see me hurt again. Okay, that was a lie from the enemy. Okay, from that I took on in childhood as an in my inner child. Now, what is an inner child? If you think about it, you know, we've talked about your subconscious mind. And what is your subconscious mind? There is your conscious mind. We all are sitting here. We are in our conscious state. Okay. There's our subconscious mind that works just below our conscious thinking. And then there's our unconscious mind, which is the part of us that we really can't get connected to. Well, between conscious and unconsciousness is this bridge called your subconscious mind. Best way to understand about your subconscious mind is when you're driving, when you were learning to drive, everything was, you know, 9 and 2 position, put on the gas, put on the brake. You remember how your arms ached when you first learned how to, you know, you're trying to do the mirror and, you know, and do the clickers, and, you know, I mean, it was all conscious thought to do this. And yeah, you get in, you turn it on, you do the blah, 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 right? And if you're like me, I'm going to do that probably 2 minutes, but your subconscious mind has taken over that understanding and learning process. So that you aren't having to sit there and think about aspirate, whatever. It just comes to you naturally. That's your subconscious mind at work. Now, you can bring to your awareness my subconscious mind going, well, you know, I'm hitting the bumps on the side of the bumps on the side of the road. Subconscious mind wakes up, you know, and now I'm aware of what I'm doing, right? And that's called self-awareness. Okay? That's the whole point of self-awareness. Bringing that subconscious that we automatically do into a conscious awareness where we can do something about it. So, as a child, when we were injured, what our subconscious mind did was a belief that it would protect us from it happening again. Oftentimes based on a lie of the enemy. Okay? And so our inner child, our little girl, this little bitty girl, and I looked pretty out of it. I was very abused, looked very out of it, was weird to the other kids. I mean, it was weird, right? And I was treated in that way, right? Well, this little girl, if you walked up and saw a 4th grade little girl standing against a wall, thinking about she only has 4 underwear left, and she can't run or play or anything because, by the way, we only wore dresses back then. There was no such thing as girls wearing pants. Thinking about that, you would go, oh, poor pumpkin. You would give love and affection and attention to her, right? Without that, this little girl is left on her own trying to figure it out. She is only got a 4th grade mind. She has 4th grade resources. She only has a mother who's doing this along with her father to her. She has no other recourse but to turn it on herself, or to somehow keep herself from being that vulnerable and authentic again. And what happens if you think about little kids, your sweet little granddaughter who runs around naked and doesn't even care and all this, that authentic vulnerability, that innocence gets trashed by the sin of this world, by our parents, by other people, by other kids, by not having somebody who comes along and helps us and mothers us and helps us get through that. And we end up growing up physically with the beliefs and the behaviors and the attitudes and the lies of the enemy that we've taken on as an inner child. And as long as we keep those subconsciously below the conscious world, they are in charge. You have a fourth grader in charge. You have a 5-year-old in charge. So when things happen, when you get really triggered, or you see somebody in the store and they're like way overreacting for the problem, it is because that little inner child has been triggered, right? And now the inner child's out creating a mess of things because they really are in charge. That's your subconscious thinking. Okay? And so here's how this works. If you think about Jesus, Jesus said to us, unless you become as little children, you won't see the kingdom of heaven. 7 little children come to me and don't hinder them, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Now, little children are the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is righteousness, joy, and peace in the Holy Spirit. That's in Romans. So in the world, how in the world do you become a little child, and what in the world does that mean? If you think about Nicodemus, when Jesus told Nicodemus, you got to be born again, and Nicodemus says, well, I can't go back into my mother's womb. This is not possible. In a sense, when Jesus tells us, you got to be like a little child, well, I can't do that. So when Jesus is saying, pumpkins, you got to get back to a place of authenticity and vulnerability, or you're going to miss righteousness, joy, and peace in the Holy Spirit here on earth now. You got fire insurance, yay, great, yoo-hoo. Your life here is you're missing out on so much because you had to give up authenticity and vulnerability and innocence and naivety and being who God made you to be. And you're going to miss it. See? And by the way, also, you got to get dumped the lies of the enemy that your little girl agreed with. Because they're not working for you anymore. It's not working. And it actually keeps us from being vulnerable and authentic with ourselves. Remember what intimacy is? Be seen and known and heard and experienced and accepted and loved anyway. That's an authenticity and vulnerability. But if I'm ready to go there, I'm willing to take that on. I'm not willing to show my underbelly. I'm going to ever have intimacy with myself, with God, or with anybody else. Right? And our world today is so amazingly afraid of vulnerability and authenticity. And somehow that is seen as weakness. But really, the ability to be vulnerable and authentic is tremendous courage and strength. The word courage, you guys were talking about courage earlier. The word courage comes from the word cur, which means wholehearted. It means I put all of me into this. My whole heart is here. I'll be me. I'll be who God made me to be. And the backup is when I learn that, and I am received and welcomed by Jesus, like he did those little kids. Somebody else rejecting me, oh well, whatever. Okay, because my true parent won't get it wrong. My true parent will allow my little girl all messed up and messy and hurting and weird looking and all these things. He takes me up in his arms. He blesses me. And you know what? You don't care what so-and-so thinks. If they don't like me, that's cool. Okay, whatever. Instead of trying, and see, what we've done is we've ended up with divided hearts, where our inner child has got all these rules, all these ways of being, all these ways of trying to protect us from what they couldn't help or get protection from. If you think about it, I had no other protection. I thought oftentimes about running away. I remember the first time I thought about running away with my sister I was 6 years old, and we were sitting on two toilets in a, with a stall thing between us in a train station with my mom on the way to West Virginia. We were talking about running away. And it was this nasty, dirty train station. And we were far enough away from everyone. And we didn't know where to go. There was no answer. There was no other answer. So if I ended up in a place of having to cut off or not have that part of me anymore, Jesus was in that stall with me, and he swore to redeem it. If you think about being the parent you long for and you deserved to you now, what courage that does is it creates compassion. And compassion for myself first gives me the energy to have compassion for you. That's the kingdom of heaven. And so in this courageous place of now I will be wholehearted. I will take back all these little injured parts of me that are embarrassing and, they feel ashamed of, and all these places afraid of or angry about or whatever. I'll take all those back. Love them the way they deserve to be loved. And out of that compassionate place for myself, I have it to give to other people. That's what Christianity is. That's what it's supposed to be. Authentic, vulnerable. Because courage breeds compassion, breeds connection. See, people don't care what you know until they know you care. And I can't give you what I don't have. If I can't be compassionate to you because I don't have it in myself, I have nothing to give you about kingdom of heaven. Courage, compassion, connection. All are the essence of authenticity and vulnerability. And so here's the thing. The other thing about this, we have inner children. There's typical types of inner kids inside of us. There's the fearful one. There's the critic who's trying to keep everybody in line so this doesn't happen again. Okay? Who's like, stand against the wall and don't let anybody see up your skirt, Carole. Okay? Who's just trying to protect. There's the fearful one. There's the angry one, typically, who takes on all the anger, or gets insulted quickly, or is unforgiving because I'm not letting this happen to me again, so I won't forgive you and get close enough to you again. Okay? We have types of inner children that have taken on jobs for us that now harm us in our adult life, and especially harm us because wherever there is a place that is below my consciousness that I have not become aware of, search me and try me and know my heart, oh God, and see if there's any wicked way in me. When I don't have connection to that part of me, that part of me is running the show. Now, so why inner child work? Well, because when I connect and get to know those places in me, those hurt places, those injured places, those places that I have agreements with the enemy,